Okay, so we're going to focus on the unit circle for those of you who struggle with the unit circle a little bit in this short series of videos. And hopefully by the end of this series, if you watch all three, the unit circle will be one of your top three favorite circles, as it is mine, assuming that it is not already in one of your top three favorite circles. But this video, we're going to specifically focus on degrees for the unit circle. Here we go. Okay, so first we're going to start with the first quadrant, because if we can understand the first quadrant, then it makes it much easier for us to understand the rest of the degrees around the unit circle. So I'm going to draw the first quadrant. We're going to say this is 0 degrees, and this is 90 degrees, and obviously this here is a perfect right angle because I drew it so perfectly. Anyway, all right, so what we need to do first is we need to think a little bit about our geometry skills. And let's say we were to trisect this angle. So we were to divide it into 3 equal angles. So let's go ahead and do that. This, and I'm going to do this. Well, what do I know the measure of each one of those angles is? Well, if I divided it into 3 equal angles, then this is 30 degrees, this is 30 degrees, and this is 30 degrees. But more importantly, in terms of the unit circle, I'm going to use this 30 degrees because this is going to be one of my special angles on the unit circle. So I care about the 30 degrees, but what is this actual angle? Well, 30 plus 30, that's 60 degrees, and then we have the 90 degrees. So those are the angles in the first quadrant. If I take 90 degrees and I divide it into 3 equal angles, or trisect the angle. But that's not all of the angles in the first quadrant, because what else happens? Well, if we start in the first quadrant again, and now I'm starting with a blank slate. So again, this is 0 degrees and this is 90 degrees. But now instead of dividing this into 3 equal angles or trisecting the angle, I'm going to divide it into 2 equal angles. And so I have this angle right here. Well, what is 90 divided by 2? I know that this is 45 degrees, and this is also 45 degrees. But again, the important thing that we care about with regards to special angles on the unit circle is the first 45 degrees. So what happens when we put this all together? Well, the angles that we care about on the unit circle, we get these angles from trisecting. So I know this is going to be 30 degrees, and this one here is going to be 60 degrees. But then I'm also going to bisect the angle, and I know that this angle here is 45 degrees. So in the first quadrant, on the unit circle, we have 0 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, and then 90 degrees finishes out the first quadrant. Again, a couple of ways to remember that is taking the 90, trisect it. That's how we get these two angles here. Taking the 90, bisect it. That's how we get the 45. Once we understand these angles, again, these angles are going to be how we determine all of the other angles around the unit circle. So let's look at exactly what I mean by that. Well, now let's draw the first and the second quadrant. So I'm going to go ahead and I've got my 30, 45, 60, 0 of course. This is 90. A couple of things we need to know. Hopefully we understand that halfway around a circle is 180 degrees. Well, what I mean by everything repeats or it's the same, so in the second quadrant now, I'm going to have these exact same angles. The only difference is the 30 degrees is this right here, right? But on the unit circle, when we're talking about our special angles, we don't call this 30 degrees because that would be confusing. This is 30 degrees. And also remember that on the unit circle, we have direction to our angles. And so when I'm labeling this angle here as 30, that's because I'm saying that the positive side of the x-axis here is 0 degrees, so the direction to the angle is going counterclockwise. Well, what if this measure here is 30 degrees? What is the counterclockwise measure from 0 degrees? Very good. That's going to be 150 degrees. And again, this angle here, that measure is 45 degrees. Well, what is the counterclockwise measure from 0? The actual angle that we write on the unit circle is 135 degrees. And then the last one here, again, this measure is 60 degrees. These are what we call, just a side note, this 30, this 45, and this 60 right here, these are what we call reference angles. You may or may not know that term. You just need to understand that it's the angle formed between the terminal side of the angle and the x-axis. And so again, if this is 60 degrees, that measurement, then I know this measurement here has to be 120 degrees. Now the same idea continues around the unit circle. So we can continue in the third and the fourth quadrant with these same, again, what I'm using the term as reference angles, which are the angles from the x-axis to the terminal side. We can see on this completed unit circle, again, 0, 30, 45, 60, 90, 120, 135, 150, 180. Now we're halfway around. And then if we look in the third and the fourth quadrants, here is 210 degrees, here is 225 degrees, and here is 240 degrees. But what I have been referring to the entire time is, not the entire time, but some of the time, is that this angle right here is actually 30 degrees, right? This angle right here from the x-axis to the terminal side of the angle is 45 degrees. And this angle right here is 60 degrees. And so that 30, that 45, and that 60 are going to keep coming back. And if you understand those from the first quadrant, then you can figure out the rest of the angles around the unit circle in degrees. Because they're going to keep coming back. You know that the 30 is the smallest, 45 is the middle, 60 is the largest. And understand that when we're talking about those 30, that 45, and that 60, it's always with reference to the x-axis here. So they're always going back to the x-axis because, yes, technically, this here is also a 30-degree angle. And we know from when we originally looked at the 45-degree angle that this is also a 45-degree angle. It's going to mess us up if we start measuring to the y-axis. In trig, we always want to measure things to the x-axis anyways. Then again, finally, we can see that as well. The fourth quadrant here, if I draw these in, this is 300, 315, and 330. But with reference to the x-axis, this is 30 degrees, this is 45 degrees, and this is 60 degrees. Sorry, that looks like 600. 60 degrees. And just if there is any confusion, just to show you this entire angle here, that's the 300 degrees that we're talking about. So that's always with reference to the positive side of the x-axis starting at the angle 0. Anyway, that is the unit circle in degrees. If you want to see radians, go to the next video.